Hey there, it's Mike Goldstein with the Crushing It with Kitchen Remodeling Podcast. And today we are so lucky to have with us Rocky Lalvani, who is going to be able to talk to us about how you really need to think about profit first rather than thinking about your expenses first. He's going to go over some of the most groundbreaking techniques and strategies in business management, really that people are running with today and are making them more profitable than ever. And we're going to do all of that just after this.
Are you looking for some fresh ideas? Are you looking for some fresh ideas to jumpstart your kitchen remodeling business? Welcome to the Crushing It with Kitchen Remodeling Podcast. Your host, Michael Goldstein, founder of Kitchen Remodeling SEO, the digital marketing agency working exclusively with kitchen remodeling contractors. And also, the author of the Ultimate Internet Marketing Guide for kitchen remodeling contractors, will provide insights on proven tips and strategies from top experts in this space so that you can take advantage of industry best practices. Your host, Michael Goldstein. Join Mike as he shares his knowledge each week with an insightful interview or educational segment about how to turn your online marketing efforts into more kitchen remodeling leads and sales opportunities than ever before.
And we're back. And I'm going to bring in with us Rocky right about now. Hey, Rocky, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on, Mike. Excited to be with you today.
Thanks. We're so happy to have you here. So, Rocky, we talked a little bit in the intro, what you are, what you do. You're kind of one of the masters of the profit first system that's been out for a few years now. But really, tell us a little bit of what the heck it is that you actually do with this, and how do you help, home service contractors, people like that.
Let's face it, most home service contractors probably hate accounting. They probably hate their invoicing. They probably hate looking at the finances. They love the parts of the business that they love, which is for a lot of them maybe doing the work or some other part of it. But the reality of the situation is if no one's looking at your finances, your margins, and how things are going, you're probably going to struggle. Most businesses have tons of leaks in them where cash is just pouring out. And so what I do is I focus on the business from the beginning to the end. So you're all about SEO. One of the things where we start with is we look at how many leads are coming into the business. We look at conversion factors. Then we look at average sale and average transaction, and then how that all relates at the end of the day to profit and ultimately to cash flow. And I look at the entire spectrum and help them to make wiser decisions.
That's really kind of a really good high level overview. One of the things that I have really implemented in my own business, and I try and advise a lot of my clients to, is really when you're looking at how you're pricing a project, don't look at your expenses as kind of the guiding factor, at least not as the sole most primary guiding factor. You need to look at what is it that you need to live, what is it that you need to be successful, and I think that's one of the real aspects of the whole profit first, just the whole avenue of it is it's not about just taking your expenses, tripling them and saying, okay, this is what I charge, but rather there's a whole lot more that goes into it now.
There is. And a big part of it is determining what you need for your lifestyle. And then based on what your lifestyle is, how do you build a business that supports that? And a big part of that is one of the factors that I think a lot of people leave out of the equation is their time, and they give it away for free. And so you do have to watch that as well. It is good to have some of the factors though, like on average, we're looking at 3 times what our material cost is. That works, but you have to make sure that that's a real number. Like a lot of times people will say this is the average, but does it work for you? Does it make sense? Does it cover your overhead? And just making sure that that's the case. And then you've got to live within that budget, right? You can't say, hey, I'm going to do this and then spend 4 times over.
Well, and it's funny too, because when you look at the cost to do something, it's one thing when you've got a crew of 8 or 10 guys and they're all on salary versus you're outsourced. You get a bunch of subcontractors that are coming in. And quite frankly, you may be paying those subcontractors considerably more than you would an employee because they're one-off type of folks. And then on the other end of it, just like you talked about, your own time. I mean, how many people, they go in and say, well, yeah, but it's going to take me 3 hours to do this, but I don't actually think into it like, well, what am I worth per hour? Because it's more, well, I'm doing it, so it doesn't matter. This way I can get the price down and I can get the client in. And one of the things that we talk about a lot on this show is, who is your ideal target? What does that avatar look like? And generally that avatar is not going to be the person who wants to pay the least amount of money. They're going to be the person who wants to have the highest quality, because if you're dealing with somebody who's only going to pay you, a couple $100 over your, what it costs you to do it, first of all, they're going to nitpick more than the guy who's going to pay you 10 times. But more importantly, you're not taking into account, listen, if you had to go out and get a job, what would you get for all that time? And I'm sure that's something you talk about a lot with, with your folks.
It is. We try to come up with, the business owner has certain skills. What are those skills? What do you love to do? What are the things that drain you? And then also looking at your time value. You should be spending your time doing what brings the highest and best value to the company. For a lot of business owners, let's say you're worth $100 or $200 an hour. Don't do $20 an hour work. Pay somebody to do your $20 an hour work so that you can do your $100 and $200 an hour work. Because you've got those skills. So why are you wasting time on things that somebody else can do? And today, there's so much automation available, are you making things simpler and easier? So for some of my construction guys, what we'll actually do is we'll help them build custom spreadsheets so that it becomes very easy for them to bid out their jobs and that they don't forget things. A lot of times we forget certain parts of the job or certain costs. And that's a big part of what we also do. We dig into their numbers to say, where are truly your pools of profit? So if you're doing installations, we might find that certain types of installations provide you tremendously more profit than other types. And if that's the case, then shift your business to look for the type of work that gives you the highest margins and the best return on your time and efforts.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I can tell you, we've worked with a couple of kitchen remodelers or just home remodelers who, they hear, terms like cabinet refacing and resurfacing and painting and things like that. And they think, oh, no, that's low end stuff. I don't want to do that. I only want the $250,000 home remodel. And, and I ask them, well, how much profit do you make on one of these, little refacing? And they'll make 50, 60% profit. And then on the big job, they might make 20% profit. But what they see is the gross revenue at the end of the day, not the actual amount that goes into the bank. And it's so common, but
So we have a little saying, top line is vanity, bottom line is sanity, and cash flow is reality. And, if you think about it, let's just say you had that large job, it's $250,000. Let's say you're making 20% off of that. That's 50 grand. Yeah. But what happens when something goes wrong, right? You make a 10% mistake and now you're down to $25,000. That project is probably months of work or a considerable amount of time. Whereas your cabinet refacing, you might be in and out in 48 hours, less chance of mistakes, always guaranteed that you're going to make this kind of revenue, and you get better utilization of labor. And I think today that's the big problem is getting good labor, keeping good labor. So you have to look at the business in entirety and see where you can make the most money for the least effort.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Now, when you're talking to your folks about kind of looking at the profitability, looking at the expenses, looking at what you do versus what the other things you do, one of the big pieces that we really kind of hone in on is automation, is using the right CRM system. And then, you send out an estimate. Well, how many times, or someone just, they download your planning guide or whatever it might be. How many touches does it take? If it takes 5 to 7 touches for you to actually get an appointment, do you actually do that yourself? Or do you have a system where, you might pay $300 a month for software and then you're done? That's a big part of it too, is I think it's the control factor. A lot of people, they don't want to give it up. They want to continue to do everything themselves, and they don't see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel there.
Well, and that comes back to your time again. What we usually do for people who have to go through systems like that, I love the they ask you answer um, philosophy, which is basically create videos of the most common questions people have and
Mhm.
then send those to them in an automated fashion. Also, have them on your website. So when somebody comes to you with a question, they don't have to call you up and ask. You've got the most popular questions right there. It might be, what's the advantage of granite over something else? What are the advantages of this cabinet over that cabinet? The more you can educate the client, the more of an expert you become, and the more time they spend on your site or reading your emails, what you're doing is building know, like, and trust. So, for me, example, I have a podcast. I teach people everything I do. They spend months listening, just like people are spending months listening to you. It builds that trust, and then when they show up, they're ready to buy. So you may not have to go through six touches. The six touches happen behind the scenes, and they call you up and go, "We're ready to order our kitchen."
Yeah. And guys, those of you who are listening, that was really, really great advice about the video piece. But beyond that, think about it from an SEO standpoint. If, the second most popular search engine in the world is YouTube. If you're creating all this great content you put on YouTube, you can now embed that content, put it on your website, add in a little structured data, and you can now try and optimize yourself so you come up with those videos. So when people, the reason they're popular questions is because people are asking them. So they're probably searching Google with those long tail terms, and it gives you yet another way to generate more interest, get in front of more people, and then be able to pick and choose who you really want to work with rather than who you have to work with.
So true. And that's the thing. When you start to niche down and you start to really specialize, you get to work with the kind of people that you want to work with, that are more fun to work with and don't drive you crazy.
Yeah, and that's why I always say when I talk to people, what is that perfect avatar? Because stop wasting time, pitching to people who you don't want to work with. Stop trying to close people who you've got a 10% shot at closing. Close people who've got an 80% shot at closing. That's it. It just comes down to making yourself more efficient, making your business more efficient, and really what's more enjoyable. And I got to think there's nothing less enjoyable than going out and pitching projects and then getting turned down. So.
And so that's all about having a good and profitable sales process in place. And I think that's the other thing, if this is going to be a long process, you need to make sure that you're keeping your pricing up to date, in the sense that if you put a proposal out, with the way things are going in today's world, supply chain issues, everything else, I think you need to stay on top of those changes. And I think a lot of people got blindsided early on, or they didn't realize that they were losing money on some of their installs because pricing was changing so fast. And so you got to create contracts that say, hey, if we see a price increase of X, then we need to pass that on to you. Or maybe as soon as you get the order, you're ordering the cabinets or whatever it is you need to order, so you can lock in pricing, because taking that risk is difficult. And then also just your terms. How are you getting paid? Are you doing that appropriately? Are you appropriately funneling the money to where it should go so that you have great cash flow? All of these different parts have to come together, and it's all thinking through your business instead of just kind of winging it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious your positions. I've had a couple clients recently who have really delved into the cost plus pricing method, and I mean I think that kind of speaks a little bit to the profit first avenue. Is you figure out what is your profit. This is what I'm going to charge, and then what we do is it's gonna whatever your materials cost plus this is the fee.
Right.
Do you find that that you get a lot of pushback from people? Well, yeah, but I can't really sell that because then they know what I'm really making on them, and things to that extent.
So I think that depends. It depends on how much time you're in there and how you're doing it.
Yeah.
People can anyway figure out what you're making. The other thing is when you do the cost plus, you should probably put margin into the cost. So depending on where you're getting your product from, you might be marking it up or getting a discount. So some of your money is hidden in there as well as
Sure.
the other part. Yeah, I think it really depends on what your business model is and how you do it. If you've got those big margins, though, then they're probably not listening to us because they're fat and doing well with their cash flow, right?
This is true. It's funny. I always find money hides a lot of ills, and that's why I always say, sales it's so important, because if you're doing well in sales, you actually probably are not doing well in your operations, because you're overlooking so much. And it's, that's one of the best things when we work with people is we delve into kind of their marketing systems, and we delve into, how much are you paying for this ad and that ad. And I'll tell you, we had a client, couple months back. We found that they were paying $1,300 a day in Google ad spend. $1,300 a day to get 8 to 10 leads, by the way. Insane. And
how many of those were they closing?
They were closing about 20%.
Okay.
Which, wasn't bad, but I would have liked to see it higher. Point being is, what we did is we started looking at all the terms that people are clicking on that they're not converting. You're getting hundreds of dollars a day on high click value, but no conversion. No one's filling out a lead. No one's making a phone call. We started implementing some negative keywords, and all of a sudden their ad spend went down to $800 a day. 500 out of the 13 gone. That's about 25%, or maybe I don't know. I'm not great at math off the top of my head, but it was a really significant amount, and their lead flow did not go down one. They were continuing to get 8 to 10 leads a day, spending $800. So their CTR is going sky high, which means that now not only is your ad spend allowing you to generate more lead for it, but Google sees you as, you're putting out a better ad because your click-through rate goes up. So conversely, the position goes up. So little things like that, when you're looking at where you're spending too much, where what you're not doing right from a financial standpoint, can have ramifications across the board and across your entire business.
$500 a day is 15 grand a month.
Yeah,
that's big money to your pocket.
It is. And now mind you, the average, solo or someone who's 2 or 3 people, they're not going to spend it. They don't have you don't have 300, 400K a year to put in ad spend alone, let alone management fees and all of that. And the problem is the companies that do have that are so big that it doesn't really affect, and they don't see it. All they see, and if you go and say, hey, listen, I can get you this for $500 a month in ad spend or $800 in ad spend, they think that you're gonna do something a little shady, or you're not gonna really give me the quality that I want. And just, you don't have to spend the most amount possible to get the best result.
I think one of the biggest things, especially in this industry, what we do is yard signs and labeling your trucks well, because one of the biggest lead gens is being in a neighborhood. Like, it builds trust, just the fact, because people can go talk to that neighbor. Hey, can I see your new kitchen? Doing all of that. So that really helps. And it's making sure that you leave the signs up. Maybe you got a QR code on your truck so that as people walk by, they can connect with you. And even doing mailers, post, take pictures. Go to old school postcards, right? Check out the kitchen we just did.
Yeah.
Cost you what? Under $1 to mail a postcard to the 200-300 homes right around it for $200-300. If you pick up one home, that's great.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it is, and that's actually interesting you say that, because we just started implementing that strategy with one of our clients, and these guys were getting like an extra 2 or 3 leads every month just from that. Now it's very early on, so I don't know what the close rate's going to be and all of that yet. But it's really important to be. And you said something earlier, is you need to be the company that everybody knows, likes, and trusts. And that's that Google thinks the same way. If you don't have reviews, they're not going to rank you. If you don't have authority, you're not talking about everything, then they don't think that people are going to trust you. It all comes down to that know, like, and trust factor. And nobody's going to no one's going to trust you and your message more than they're going to trust what your neighbors say about you. So that's a huge little marketing tip for sure. Um, so let me ask you this, Rocky. If someone were to come to you and they want, say, "Look, what is the first steps that I take to really dissect my finances and figure out where I'm going wrong, where I'm wasting money? What does the process look like?"
So I think the first step is understanding where your money is currently going.
Yeah.
And if you're using a decent accounting system and it's done properly, you can start to look at where is my cost? What's my labor cost? What's our cost of goods? What is the overhead in this business that it's costing me to run my business on a monthly basis? And
Mhm.
just getting an idea of what those numbers are, comparing them to industry standards, comparing them, like in Mike's book, there's a chart for a business of this size. This is what we expect, your profit margins to be.
Yeah.
And then asking yourself, am I making those margins? Are you getting paid appropriately? So some people may say, oh, I'm profitable, but did you pay yourself? Well, no. So
Well, I
making sure
love that.
you're,
I love that, by the way, because so many people say, "Oh yeah, we're doing all this profit." I said, "Oh, and what's your salary?" My salary. Well, let me tell you how much money the business is bringing in. If you're reinvesting all the money in the business, you're not really profitable. You're
no.
growing a business for sure, but at the end of the day, you can only sustain that for so long.
You can, and that's why what we talk about is good financial hygiene. So in the type of people who are listening to this, a lot of what we like to do is the deposit money immediately gets set aside and we use the deposit money to pay for all the materials and do that appropriately. We don't commingle that with our overhead because it's really not yet into overhead. It's only when we get second and third payments do we look at putting it in to cover our overhead. So we create a lot of financial discipline for them so that they know that their money is flowing where it's supposed to be. Otherwise, sometimes we get a lot of deposits in and we spend it, and then it comes time to buy something and it's like, oh, where's the money? Well, you spent it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I also think people look at or they don't look at their holding cost either. So they'll say, "Oh, there's a great deal going on granite right now. There's a great deal on cedar or whatever it might be," and they stock up, and then they realize, "Geez, I don't have the money to hit payroll now because I bought all this granite, and this is great for the next 6 months. We're not going to need to buy it, but you're not using." The idea, I think, is that you want to use the money that people are paying for their project to buy the inventory for their project.
Correct.
And we have a word, when you take money from one person, use it for somebody else. It's called Ponzi, right? And it's been a lot of people got in a lot of trouble for that. So
They do. And we try to help keep those financials clean. And we also, what we like to do is everyone puts out the original proposal.
yeah.
Does anyone go back to see if what it actually cost you to do it versus what your proposal said? So is your proposal real? Because a lot of times they may not be real. And a lot of times that's what we find. What actually goes into the project isn't what they thought was going into the project. And it's taking the time to do that kind of analysis, have the systems in place to make sure that it's true, because many times it's not.
Yeah, and I think that also goes to, at least for our listeners, what type of work are you doing? Are you a full home remodeler, and taking on a project that might take you 3 to 5 months to complete, versus are you someone who's coming in and just, you build custom cabinets, you install them, you're in and out in 3 to 5 days. Are you doing even refacing? Maybe you're out in 48 hours. It's a whole lot easier, I think, to track your projects and track the profitability and all of that on a smaller project. But that doesn't mean that you don't need to continue to do that on the big projects as supply chains fluctuate, as prices fluctuate, as the labor market, which really has fluctuated recently. I can't imagine that people who are bidding out a project, 6 months ago, and they're starting it now, and they're going to be doing it for the next 3 months, that the labor cost that they're going to see come December and January of next year is going to be even close to what it was when they bid out that project.
And those things change. And that's why you have to be very careful how you write your contracts. I think the other thing that comes up in the industry is a lot of times as the year gets towards the end, they'll go have a conversation with their tax accountant, and their tax accountant doesn't want them to pay taxes. So they're like, oh, go buy a new truck.
Yeah.
And they go buy this new fancy truck that doesn't do anything to drive profitability. They all feel good because I got a new truck. And then come March and April, they're wondering why they have no cash flow. It's because the truck crushed their cash flow.
But you know what that reminds me of is attorneys who they love billboards, right? They, you drive down Route 95 or, where Route 6, wherever you are in the country, and you see, these giant attorney billboards, and every 90 feet or so, you see the same attorney pop up again and again and again. And it's a great ego stroke. And it is really good brand awareness campaigns, very similar like now Facebook campaigns. You might see somebody pop up on Facebook and their video comes up time and time again. No call to action, by the way, just the video pops up. And just because you're doing that, it might make you feel good. It might make it look good. And yeah, you might spend down your profitability, but is there a return on investment? And that's, ROI is the end all and be all for everything, at least that we do. And I presume it is for what you're doing as well.
And that's what you have to look at, is because a lot of times people spend money and you ask them, is it profitable? Does it bring you a return? They're like, we don't know. We don't know where our profit's actually coming from. Yeah. So we don't know where to turn up and turn down our spending, and it makes it difficult. And so you've got to take the time to dig through all of that and make sure that you're doing it appropriately.
And it's all about tracking. On our end, like I said, we track everything. And I have a saying, if you can't track it, you can't improve it. And it's so true. People who they say, well, we have these Facebook ads running, and we've got these postcards going out, and we've got these mailers, and we've got lawn signs, and we've got Google ads, and people find us for SEO. And I say, that's great. How many leads came from each of those? Well, we don't really know, because they might have seen our number and then looked us up on Google, or they might have seen a video and then they drove by and saw a sign. So that, you've got to have a way to really track that. And QR codes, have different phone numbers on every single piece so you know where they come from. There's so many ways that you can track better than what you're doing now. And by doing that, it makes it a whole lot easier to figure out where your money's going and what's really driving profit and driving sales.
Correct. And the same thing happens on the trucks. I can't tell you how often the trucks are full of excess inventory, something not used. They don't put it back where it came from, excess tools. Yeah. It's not unusual that a truck's got $50,000 of profit hidden inside of it because you didn't take care of those small items.
Oh, I'm sure our listeners here, they don't ever go out and see a new tool. Say, oh, I got to have that never happens. Never ends up on the truck. Which, by the way, never gets used either.
No, and that's true too. You have to have appropriate usage of your tools. Not get too excited, but also make sure that if you send something out to a job and it's not used, that it gets put back appropriately, and you manage all of that. If your trucks are a mess, your finances are a mess.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, do you have a hobby that pays you a few bucks, or are you running a business? And that's a big thing. A lot of people, I love what I do. And I heard the old saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. That's crap. It really is. If you love what you do, just make sure you're running it like a business. You may not love what you do then, but at least, you're going to make a good living doing it. And then you can really do what you love to do. And I'm sure nobody really loves to go and snake drains, but maybe there's one guy. I don't know.
You never know. But yeah, it's appropriate to track everything, to know what's going on within the business, and then you can fine tune it and you become more profitable. I can't tell you how many 7-figure business owners I talk to, and they're just not taking any money home. And that's not fair. That's not fair for them at all.
And not only that, but they're usually very proud of the fact that their business has this massive revenue number at the end of the day. And, if you're driving around in a beat up 10-year-old Kia, but the business is making $3 million a year, there's an imbalance going on somewhere, for sure. So, Rocky, let me tell you, you have really dropped some golden nuggets on us today, and I really appreciate. I know all my listeners really appreciate some of what you've had to tell us. But if they hear what if they like what they've heard today, and they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way? How do they find you? Where are you?
So the website is Profit Comes First. And if they go to the website, they can get 2 free chapters of Mike's book if they want Mike's book, and just check it out and see if it's something worth buying. Or they can listen to my podcast, Profit Answer Man. Wherever you listen to your podcasts, you'll find it. And basically what we do is we teach everything in the Profit First system. We teach you how to think about profitability inside your business.
That's great. And if they want to hear you on a little more consistent basis, you got a podcast out there?
Yeah. So the podcast is Profit Answer Man. And wherever they listen to their podcasts, they can find that and check it out. And we do have all kinds of services available. We're about to launch a new course, which is for those of you who want to do it yourself. We'll show you how to do your finances in an easy way on your own. We teach you everything we do for your clients. Or if you want it done for you, we can do it for you.
And presume you got a couple downloadables there that they, some templates that they can use.
Absolutely. Everything is there as well.
Fantastic. Well, again, Rocky, it was so great having you on the show. And I'd love to have you back here. Maybe in a couple of months we can do this all over again. But it was a pleasure today. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right. Well, everybody, this was Mike Goldstein. This was Rocky Lalvani, Crushing with Kitchen Remodeling Podcast. Tune in again next week. Talk to you soon.